There's another aspect of the story which was not captured by the Daily Guide, where it talks about Tor's indebtedness, which is now ballooned to about 517 million US dollars. Now, for me, the question is this: that we've been paying Tor debt recovery levy from 2003. So I am struggling to reconcile a situation we've been paying this levy, and yet the debts keep going up. And I've been looking for answers to this. I don't know whether Atais, have you been able to find those answers?
Not really.
Because it's difficult to understand, isn't it?
Yes, because like you indicated, this idea of making Tor to operate in full capacity, the argument started way back from 2003 or 4. So at that time, the objective was to make sure that we purge Tor off the crisis that they were facing as a result of ballooning debt. So the levy, when it came first, was to address those fiscal liquidity challenges in that sector. So fast forward in 2025, we are still talking about Tema oil refinery debt. Now, if you look at the source of the debt, in fact, that was even the debt as at the end of 2024, 517 million US dollars. Part of those things has to do with suppliers' credit, because the idea of refinery simply means that you must have the crude first before you can refine. So Tor was unable to pay some of its creditors for the supply of crude that they give to Tor. Then operational losses, Moro. It will interest you to know that I have visited Tor. They have obsolete machines. We must admit that. And in fact, sometimes this even reduces the morale of staff, because you go to the office, basic machines to do, Tor doesn't have, or is obsolete. So in fact, the staff told me that what are they paying them for? And for me, I am surprised, because when Tor was set up, the idea was to place it as a strategic asset to the country. Currently, as we speak, Ghana is positioned strategically that we can make Tor the refining hub for West Africa. Why? Because of the insurgence of military takeovers by our neighbors. Many countries have cut them off the global chain. So Ghana has now become the center. So if you go, Burkina and other countries, they all clear their containers from the Ghana ports. What it means is that Tor, if it is well functioning, simply means that we can be able to even source revenue from the export of refined oil. We did it with electricity. I remember Akusumbo and other power sources were able to sell power to neighboring countries. So how come several investments and even tax or levies have been imposed to make sure that Tor works to its capacity? But Combat, I know him very well. He was my SRC president in Lagos. Yes.
You were both on campus at the same time.
So, and one thing that you cannot take away from him is commitment to duty. He was an SRC president. And so for me, I don't have any doubt that he will perform. Suffice to say that because of policy incoherence and inconsistency by successive government, we haven't done one agenda towards recovery of our national asset like Tor. President Kufuor had a different approach to how to deal with the issues of Tor. President Atamils had a different approach. President Mahama had a different approach, and then President Akufo-Addo. So because of that lack of consistency in policy, that this is how we want to make sure Tor operational, that is why we are always here. You get the point? And look, I was telling somebody that competition is also killing Tor. Why am I saying that? If you look at energy distribution to consumers, it's only ECG that does it. So there's no threat. But Tor, you have BDCs that import. Exactly. So Netco and Tor, they are the people controlling the end user distribution. So the issue is that if you know BDCs that import...
You mean Netco and ECG?
Yes. If you know BDCs that import crude or refined, at a cheaper rate to the consumer. And Tor, when Tor is producing, even at 45,000 barrels a day, the cost of producing in Tor is higher than the refined oil imported by the BDCs.
You mean it is cheaper,
it's cheaper to import fuel
into this country than bringing the raw product and giving it to Tor to refine?
To refine.
But that doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
But what is it that is accounting for the high cost of refining
It is just
crude?
because of operational inefficiency.
Okay.
The last time we discussed ECG, I told you that the problem of ECG is not funding.
Right.
It's just inefficiencies.
Right.
Because they have admitted time without number that they lose about 30 to 42% during distribution. Gridco will also tell you they also lose some transferring to ECG. VRA2 will say they also lose some transferring to Gridco. So who pays for the inefficiencies? It's a consumer. So, but if you are a BDC, there's no space for inefficiency. You import the crude from abroad, it gets to you through you go and get Lacan at NPA, have your storage tanks either with BOSS or with your private BDCs, then lodge your fuel there. At that time, it is ready for the market. But Tor, when they give them money, they, with the obsolete machines that they are using, when they are producing, a lot of the produce is waste. So yet you must pay your creditors. How do you pay? You have to convert the inefficiencies into cost for the consumer.
But I don't. When you say a lot of the things that are produced, after the main product, which is fuel,
yes,
is refined, goes to waste. I don't understand, because there are byproducts like kerosene, bitumen.
No.
And then, I don't know.
That's not
what you're talking about. Okay. So
when they say operational inefficiencies,
okay,
it means that in the process of the production,
yes,
you are unable to achieve the maximum benefit the country can get as compared to what other competitors can do.
Okay.
It's just like a business like Vodafone, MTN, all those things. They are competitors. Some do things because of economies of scale at lower rates than others. So I'm just saying that people feel that it is cheaper to import refined fossil fuel than that of our national refinery. So government regulatory policies to make sure that we increase the production capacity of Tor so that BDCs can even pick it from Tor onto the market.
Right.
That is the only way we can be nationalistic in mind about this whole idea. Look, we must inject private capital also into Tor. I am not one of the people that believe that everything must be done by government. I'm not one of them. Because we have examples of government institutions that are doing well, of course. However, we also have a lot of government institutions and state enterprises that are not doing well. 32 billion debt at Cocoa Board. It doesn't make sense. We have ECG, 68 billion. In fact, the receivables on ECG alone for this year is $42 billion Ghana cedis receivables. What they are expected to collect from people, they can collect. So that inefficiencies does not exist in the private sector. So if Tor, the idea is you make operational losses at the time of production, we must inject the private capital there to make sure that we produce efficiently. If it is also at the time of export prices to the fuel stations, we must inject private capital there to make sure we've actually...
By injecting private capital, you're asking that we divest it.
Exactly.
But this matter has come. I mean, this card has been on the table for a very long time.
I agree.
We've debated it every time. In fact, every time it comes up, CSOs kick against it because they say the strategic importance of Tor would make nonsense of it for us too, because it would increase the operational cost, and if you increase the operational cost, it defeats the very purpose for which Tor exists.
But the good news is that Ghana is gradually moving towards green transition.
Yes.
So even the over-reliance on the whole idea of fossil fuel will come down.
Right.
That's number one.
Right.
Number two,
but that's in the medium to long term.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Number two,
yes,
we have existing best practices in Africa and beyond.
Right.
How is Dangote doing his refinery in Nigeria? So when people tell me that it is difficult or it increased cost of production, like I earlier said, it is as a result of private operational inefficiency. And we know from time immemorial that private participation in any government sector always yields positive returns. So I'm not saying we must privatize the idea of toll. I'm saying that even doing it in the form of PPP is not bad for me. And in the domestic debt exchange program, the 570 million, I wanted to just give the distinction. It does not necessarily mean that operational losses and cost to toll is about $570 million. The DDEP2 accounted for this increase because all government subventions to toll or government money to toll for operational purposes, the IMF insisted that we must convert all government allocations to toll as part of the debt of toll.
Right.
Because the idea was to make sure that we win off all state enterprises' debts from the central government so that those SOEs will take it on their own balance sheet and find ways of resolving those debt issues. So if you go to ECG, that's why we were able to report 32 billion in cocoa sector, that's cocoa board. We reported 68 billion at ECG. The reason was that the IMF insisted that all those state enterprises must absorb all government grants as a liability on their books. So that now TOR is expected to look for $570 million to pay back to government and other creditors who have supplied crude oil.
And the question is, where are they going to raise that capital?
Exactly, because if you look at even TOR cash flow, it's nothing to write home about. In fact, there was this conversation in 2023 about setting up a refinery, a private refinery in Takoradi or something like that. Because that time, TOR had existed for 2 consecutive years without even producing one. True. So if you look at their cash flow position, it is not healthy to even secure foreign funding. That is why government always serves as guarantor to make sure that because of credibility of government and other benefits, investors will be happy to make sure that they resolve the issues of TOR. But the issue we always ask, at what cost to the citizen? So I am happy particularly because Edmond Combat had worked there before under Ewa Dako. So this is not somebody who is novice in the area. He is somebody who understands the job. In fact, when he was made the deputy, I was like, what? I wanted him to be the main one because I know what he can do. And finally, when we saw that he was reassigned to the position of MD. So this is not something that we, as a country, we should pride ourselves with. The ancestors or our predecessors that invested people's resources to establish this. In fact, the time they were establishing TOR, if somebody had told you that there is a revolutionary industrial revolution that will come later years, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah never saw the full benefit of TOR. So wherever he is, he will not be pleased with some of these performances we are getting. Especially recently, the performance of most state-owned enterprises have not been inspiring. And it is high time that we make sure we hold people accountable for those inefficiencies. It doesn't make sense that you have operational costs as part of your overhead costs. Operational inefficiencies have been captured. Over the weekend, we met a lot of SOEs at Alisa Hotel. Some of them will tell us that the losses that they declare, a lot of instances is negligence and inefficiency, and they report it in our books. Those are the critical things that President Mahama must tackle in all successive governments because we don't have that laxity to toy with people. People are losing public trust in politicians because people don't understand why we have gold, we have oil, and yet we are poor. And that's the one good thing that I wanted people to know about the establishment of the gold board. Because Ghana's participatory interest there of 10% and royalties of 5% does not make sense. So for me, I hope and I wish Edmond Combat well. I know he will deliver. He has given us an October date to see TOR return to producing refined oil. And I'll be happy if we get to that stage, we'll all be rejoicing.